and today I'm going to be talking about a woman who was a doctor, or should I say pseudo doctor, at Ravensbrück concentration camp. Now, Ravensbrück concentration camp is located to the north of Berlin. It was the first concentration camp which I actually read about when I was 10 years old. I got a book on Odette Sanson, who was a British special operations executive agent born in France, and she was captured in France, and she was spent around a year in Fresnes prison in Paris. She was then taken to Karlsruhe, and from Karlsruhe prison she ended up in Ravensbrück. She went there in the summer of 1944, and that's how I know of her. If you go to Ravensbrück today, there's a really good exhibition there. First time I ever went there, again, 1995, and there'd been a Russian by that time, base nearby, and things which they'd left totally smashed up and in ruins, which really stood out to me. But entering the camp in 95, there wasn't a great deal really to actually see there. But if you go there today, there's a really good exhibition there. Now, like many camps, the wooden barracks are largely not there. In most cases, they were actually removed almost immediately after the war because the wood and the barracks themselves were needed. But at Ravensbrück, you can see the SS estate, as is, for example, at Sachsenhausen. It's in really good condition, and so there's lots of exhibitions on in there. So I mean, it takes a really long time, I think, to actually go through it. I was at Sachsenhausen for 2 days, and I said to the lady in the archive thing, I said, I'll come back and I'll spend a week or two here and see how it goes. There are not many women. There's lots of women in the concentration camps, but there aren't so many at higher ranking places. Indeed, Herta Oberheuser, by the time she came to trial, she was the only one who was put on trial who was female in the doctor's trial, which was held at Nuremberg, the United States, against the doctors. Oberheuser was born in Cologne on the 15th of May 1911. Father was an engineer, and so she grew up in Dusseldorf, which is very close. I mean, it's almost as though it's one city. In fact, I mean, the whole Ruhr area is almost as though it's one city. Not quite. I mean, it's not constantly a city there, but the public transport, for example, is more or less integrated, and I think it was actually then as well. So she studied medicine in Bonn. Bonn's to the south of Cologne, and she also was studied in Dusseldorf as well. Now the family must have had a little bit of cash to be able to afford it. Now, often it was the case that you might send your sons to university, but you wouldn't send your daughters to university because that was seen as being a waste of money. I'm doing inverted commas. Indeed, actually, a friend of my mother's, who was 83, she claimed that her parents had said that to her. She wasn't able to go, they wouldn't pay for it to go to university. So I mean, that shows how lucky people of my generation were, that we got grants to be able to go to university, and so we didn't have to worry about things like that. So in the case of Oberheuser, she had to actually, the parents had enough money, but not quite enough. So enough money to send her there to get her started, but she had to actually work at the same time as she was there. Having said that, she was fortunate enough to have grown up in the Weimar Republic, when women were still encouraged to actually go to university sort of officially, whereas under the Nazi regime you now have it that there's a different role of the woman in society, which is to stay at home and look after the husband and bring as many kids up as possible. So in her case, she got a job as an assistant doctor in Bonn in the Physiological Institute, and then she worked in a clinic in Dusseldorf. And so she did decide that she wanted to do some specialist training as a dermatologist, and she got a specialist title in dermatology in 1940. And I've got dermatology, so the skin, and this to a large extent did involve experiments which had to be carried out on animals. Now, I think that this will affect what later is to actually happen. Now, one of the things she joined was the Bund Deutscher Mädel, BDM, the Hitler Youth for the girls. And now one thing, because the Nazis wanted to encourage this Volksgemeinschaft, Volk, people's, Gemeinschaft, community, people's community. And so that this is, you're supposed to do everything together. So you all work together, you go on holiday together. They wouldn't encourage things like camper vans, like, for example, because that's individual. They'd expect you all to go to some place together. And in her case, she was taking the girls out, and she became a community doctor. And when they went out and whatever they did, their treks around the countryside, and she would then be teach them basic medical skills. And so in 1937 she became a member of the Nazi Party, and later she was also a member of the National Socialist Nursing Sisters Association, Nazi Medical Association, and after the war started, the Nazi Air Raid Defense Association. People joined these organizations because it was what was expected of them. If you in a novel, bear in mind it's a novel, not a not a true story, but in 1984 you have the hero Winston Smith, and he's George Orwell, the writer. He talks of all these things he had to join and do to show that he agreed with the system. Now, whereas that was a novel, but in Nazi Germany it was something similar. In the communist countries it was similar, but not to the same degree. If you lived in the Soviet Union, yeah, you expected to join Komsomol, and if you didn't join it, then there was something wrong with you. And this could then lead to further problems further down the line, because everything was sort of planned out for you, what you could do. And if you hadn't been a member of Komsomol, for example, then you might find that university wasn't open to you, for example. Now, concentration camps put advertisements in the press. Indeed, in Ravensbrück there is there's an exhibition. It's not a particularly large one, but it's in one room, of advertisements how people actually got jobs there. And so they advertised the staff in the press. And so the same as anything else would do. But they didn't say what it was. They didn't say Ravensbrück concentration camp wants a nasty guard who's good with dogs and whips, for example. It didn't say something like that. What would happen? They would advertise it in a different way, as sort of looking after a work camp, or so they would actually turn up. People would turn up at the camp, and then they would find out what it was. And there are cases, I mean, in this exhibition in Ravensbrück, and there were people who turned up, they didn't like what was explained to them, what was happening there, they didn't like it, and they were given a return train ticket home. So it wasn't as though they had to actually do the job once they actually got there. And so now in 1940, they placed an advertisement for a camp doctor in a women's retraining camp. And so Herta Oberheuser applied. She was given 3 months training, and then she was drafted into service there. And so as of the beginning of 1941, she was reporting to the site doctors, Walter Sonntag and Gerhard Schodlowski. And these two were to become famous later, or infamous later, for the experiments which were carried out on the prisoners. Now, in May 1942, there was the assassination, or attempted assassination, of Reinhard Heydrich. Now, so the attempt to kill him actually failed, but Heydrich was rushed off to hospital. He got a bit better, he even started to eat solid foods, which is a bit it seems to me anyway, a bit unusual after major stomach surgery. And but he had a relapse. He died. Now, one of the people who sent to look after him was Karl Gebhardt. He's a protege of Himmler, and he had a hospital, or no, a clinic rather, a clinic, not a hospital, a clinic in a place called Hohenlychen, and Hohenlychen is very close to Ravensbrück. I think that was just a coincidence. Now, Gebhardt had refused to administer something called a sulfonamide, which was then the standard procedure for anybody who'd had injuries similar to those that Heydrich had had. Hitler had a personal physician, Theodor Morell. He had a factory which produced sulfonamides, and he was, of course, very keen to promote their use. So within the inner circles, the establishment elite within the Third Reich, you have these fights, people sort of conflicts amongst each other. So in this case, you've got this conflict between Karl Gebhardt and Theodor Morell, one backed by Hitler, the other one backed by Himmler. And so, indeed, it was Speer inside the Third Reich that he said that Hitler had told him that these sulfonamides were a miracle cure. In fact, the sulfonamides had just then started to become used quite commonly, or it was more common. Now, Gebhardt felt as though he had taken part of the blame for this, and what he wanted to do, therefore, was to prove that he wasn't in the wrong, that Heydrich would have died irrespective of if sulfonamides had been given or they hadn't been given. And so what he did was he got some of the women who were at the camp, and then he introduced things like bacteria, putrefactive pathogens, wood splinters, glass, anything like that, in wounds which had been cut into the legs or the arms or even the body to imitate injuries caused by bomb splinters. And then what they did was they tried various medicines on them, and they wrote up medical reports. Now, so many of the victims died. Some died years later as a result of the consequences. This actually was even in the main trial at Nuremberg in 1946. Now, Gebhardt was assisted by Fritz Fischer, Ludwig Stumpfegger, and Herta Oberheuser. So it's these four together who were doing it, and it would seem that Fischer and Stumpfegger were unable to stomach this experiment. So over time, Oberheuser was the one who actually took over more of the functions, what they should have been doing, and thus ensuring that Gebhardt had the medical evidence to back up his claim that Heydrich would have died anyway. So it was probably Oberheuser who selected the female prisoners. She was there all the time. Now, bear in mind, as a woman, she couldn't be in charge on paper, but she may well have been in charge in reality. So the people that she selected. So I'll come on to the questions at the end, because I'll sort of put me off a bit if I start answering them. But please ask them though as we go on. So Oberheuser selected the victims were largely from Poland. These are people who've been picked up. In fact, indeed, actually. I don't know if I actually did this, and I prepared a video on this. It was a case of a lady. I followed her path from where she was picked up in Lublin to I don't know. I haven't done it. I haven't published it. To Ravensbrück, and then she eventually she survived though. But there are the accounts though, because a lot of these records survived, and now Oberheuser actually did try to portray some of what she did as being sort of humanitarian, and although it needs to be pointed out, whereas Mengele later stated to his son that the people that he experimented on, he was able to save them from the gas chambers, which was his excuse. He was using his family, in 1977, 33, 34 years after the events. In the case of Oberheuser, once the experiments were finished, she would often deliberately kill the patients with injections, and sometimes she did it using petrol, gasoline, and so she put that in the syringe, and then apparently it's quite a painful death as well. They also did other experiments, such as researching what happened to the body under extreme conditions, as they did, for example, in Dachau. And this has, in cold weather, what you can actually do to actually treat things such as frostbite or similar injuries. So she wasn't only involved in these experiments, though. She also got involved in things such as abortions or forced abortions. So women turned up who were already pregnant, even as much as 8 months pregnant, and the child was killed. And this was on her own initiative. This wasn't something that she was being forced to do or had been ordered to do or anything like that. We know that she killed at least 60 people herself. And having said all of this, unlike other people who tried to use the benefit of the experiments after the war, she didn't do it. She was a Nazi, and as far as she was concerned, she was contributing to the success of her male superiors, even though she may have been actually doing the work that they should have been doing themselves. In the autumn of 1943, she went off with Karl Gebhardt as surgical assistant to Hohenleuken, and they carried on doing experiments on humans. And there she also worked for Enno Lolling, who I mentioned in a video I did on Auschwitz. He was the head of Office 3D and responsible for all the doctors within the concentration camp system. And Hohenleuken, the clinic, is still there today. In fact, you can see it very clearly from the road. It's part of it. It's not open to the public because it's been taken over by a private investor. But it's still there. Hohenleuken is, I think, well off the tourist track. It's really attractive area, though. I think, with the lakes and very. I mean, I was there in summer, so it looks attractive in the summer. Now. Oberheuser stayed there until the end of the war, so she possibly came into contact with Himmler. It's not clear if she did or she didn't. Himmler went to Hohenleuken as a sort of a bolt hole. He would escape there when he felt as though things were getting too much for him. Indeed, Guderian, in his book, he said he went there to see Himmler in Hohenleuken, and Himmler, he said, he was clearly not very ill. He just had a bit of a cold. Words to that effect in his book, that when Himmler had been put in charge of the military command Army Group Vistula. So on the 1st of May 1945, the Red Army got there, and Oberheuser, she escaped, or she attempted to escape. She was picked up on the 8th of May 1945, and she was to be put on trial. Now, there was a main Nuremberg trial, and so there was the 24 people who were supposed to be. Oh, here's a good question for you. How many people were put on trial at Nuremberg? 21. Right. So they had 24 places, and so that was it. That was what decided. So they had 12 and 12, so these 24 seats available there in the courthouse. So who was missing? Well, we know that Martin Bormann was missing, and Ley committed suicide, but there's another one. I'll tell you who it was at the end. See if anybody knows who the third one was. There's a question. There you go, to make it a bit more exciting. See who gets it first. I've got no prizes though. Anyway, so there was the doctor's trial, which the Nuremberg doctor's trial. There was 12 follow-on trials, and the doctor's trial was the first subsequent trial, and that took place from the 9th of December 1946 to 20th of August 1947. Same Nuremberg Palace of Justice, so they had all the equipment was still there, so which might be necessary, the translation stuff, the TV cameras should they want them, it was placed for the TV cameras should they want them, and 23 accused, 20 of whom were concentration camp doctors, a lawyer, and 2 administrative personnel. And the main defendant was Karl Brandt, and so the case was named after him. So it was the United States, just the United States, versus Karl Brandt et al. And so, and all future trials took the same sort of thing. No, it wasn't Hitler, Colin. Good guess. Karl. For example, you've got the Einsatzgruppen trial, so that was United States versus Otto Ohlendorf, because he was seen to be the main defendant. Right, so there's 4 charges. Charge 1 is conspiracy to commit war crimes and crimes against humanity. 2 is war crimes. Right, sorry, so the first one's conspiracy. The second one's war crimes, which included performing medical experiments. 3 is crimes against humanity, which is committing crimes described under count 2, but also on German citizens. And 4 was a membership of a criminal organization of the SS. I haven't given a very good explanation of what war crimes are. Have I? No, it wasn't Mengele. Good one, good guess, but it wasn't Mengele. So, anyway, so Herta Oberheuser was indicted on the 3 charges: conspiracy to commit war crimes, and crimes against humanity. She couldn't be indicted on the 4th charge, membership of the SS. Why? Because she was a female, and the females couldn't join the SS. So, the first charge was actually dropped, so the conspiracy charge was dropped, so that leaves war crimes and crimes against humanity. Her lawyer was Alfred Seidel, and he defended Rudolf Hess and Hans Frank. So one of them got life imprisonment, the other one was hanged, so so far he's not doing very well. And mind you, I must say this in Seidel's favour, he never gave up on Hess, and he continued to take care of him for 40 years. And anyway, so Oberheuser worked for Gebhardt at both Ravensbrück and Hohenlychen. Gebhardt was a protege of Himmler. He'd gone to the same school as Himmler's father, whereas Himmler's father had been the headmaster. Gebhardt had been the Himmler family doctor, although not the personal physician of Heinrich Himmler. He had been in the beer hall putsch on the 9th of November 1923, and he treated the people who'd been wounded on that day. He didn't join the Nazi Party until after it came to power, because he said that the reason he did join, including what he said at the trial, was that because he was a professor, he had to be a member of the party. So he made, when he spoke quite with confidence and about things which were easily proven, but he was a bit more devious on things which he thought they didn't have the answers for. So he only partially admitted his responsibility for human experiments, because he repeatedly blamed Himmler in a way, it was Himmler, he said, who insisted on stricter screening of doctors involved in experiments, suggesting that there may have been some type of secrecy which he didn't know about, sort of alluding to this. Gebhardt recognized his responsibility, however, for the sulfonamide test on 60 Polish women at Ravensbrück. Although he claimed the initiative came from Robert Gravitz, and he was conveniently dead. You've seen Downfall. Gravitz is the one who blew himself up with the grenades under the table. And no, it wasn't Goebbels, Frank. It's not a bad guess, but I think they were pretty clear that Goebbels was dead by then. But keep trying. I shall let you know at the end. If I forget to let you know at the end, Ask me, okay, for the answer. So Gebhardt claimed in court that he hadn't carried out experiments to Gravitz's specification, but Gravitz, he said, wanted absolutely warlike wounds, and the mortality was minimal. That's what he said. That's his words in court. Gravitz, I think, in Downfall, got a very, very positive. He was shown a very positive light, which wasn't really the case. He wasn't as. I think maybe it was he comes across that he wants to leave Berlin. He's not allowed to do so, and so then he decides he's got to go home, and he seems to be a loving father of his family, and then he kills them by a grenade under the table. It kills everybody, including himself. Anyway, now Gebhardt claimed the following, and I'm going to quote what he said in court. Stupid and untrue is the view of lay people who call it an outrageous crime when people are infected with gas gangrene. As is well known, gas gangrene only occurs due to a shift in pressure in the muscle tissue, so it cannot be said to be from human cruelty. And Gebhardt, to make the point, then offered himself to be a candidate for gas gangrene to prove that the experiments that he had taken part in were harmless. The court didn't take him up on his offer, and instead it sentenced him to death. 20th of August 1947, he was hanged on 2nd of June 1948 in Landsberg prison. It wasn't Eichmann either. No, not Eichmann. But keep trying. Keep more guesses. Right. Now in the trial, Gebhardt, though, did try and pass some of the blame onto Fischer, but for some reason he tried to exonerate Oberheuser, and so this might have been quite difficult for Alfred Seidel, because Seidel was representing both Fischer and Oberheuser. Now in court, Herta Oberheuser tried to play on the fact that she was a woman. She tried to minimize her role by claiming that she was only involved to the extent that her gender would allow as an assistant to the camp physician, although she admitted having detailed knowledge of experiments using sulfonamide and bone transplantation. She said her main role was to screen the subjects who were named on the roster given to her by the camp administration. Once in possession of these lists, she said her role was to determine the state of the prisoner's health, and if the prisoner wasn't healthy enough to be experimented upon, then she would have to tell the doctor, and then you'd have to find someone else to take that person's place. And once the healthy women had been once the sick ladies had been replaced by healthier ones, it was Oberheuser said it was Fischer who performed the operations, and she said that she did help and assist at some of these operations, but her duty was to monitor post-operative care. She admitted, though, she had seen harsh treatment by Walter Sonntag, who would actually hit the prisoners who reported to the sick ward for treatment. So lethal injections were often given to those who were dying, and she admitted that she'd given 5 or 6 such injections. So it's 10% of what she actually did do. Although she claimed to be an assistant, she couldn't remember or didn't really know the severity of the injuries which were made on the patients. Nor, for that matter, did she know which muscles or bones were used for the purposes of the experiments. She went on to claim she was unable to say with certainty how many persons had had permanent injuries. Only 3 had died as a result of the experiments, as far as she could remember, and she thought that maybe around 40 had been treated. But we know that the number of victims in these experiments went into hundreds. And so despite the efforts to say, I was only a woman, I didn't really have it, and it was the men who did it, it was quite clear under cross-examination of various witnesses who actually did survive, and that Oberheuser was just as bad, if not worse, than the men. And I'm going to put the light on over here. if I can. There we go. Is that any better? I'll put it, so turn it around a bit. There we go. Yeah, that's a bit better. So on the December the 20th, 20th December 1946, 37-year-old Polish patient Władysława Kowalewska came to Nuremberg, and she testified, and she showed what had actually happened to her in the dock. And she was just somebody. She was picked. She was a teacher living in Grudziądz. She moved to Lublin. Gestapo searched her house looking for somebody who'd been a Polish army officer. Couldn't find him, but so they picked her up instead. And from Lublin, she was arrested. She was arrested in Lublin. She was sent to Ravensbrück. And I think I'll do a video on her. She said, though, that Dr. Oberheuser treated her cruelly. When I was in my room, I remarked to my fellow prisoners, she said, I've got a quote from here, that the prisoners were operated on very bad conditions, and they weren't even given a chance to recover. Now, some German nurse must have heard this, and this was then reported to Dr. Oberheuser, and then Oberheuser treated them very, very badly, and indeed made her wounds even worse. Having read some of these reports, they are pretty horrific. Another thing about all of these Nazi medical experiments, as far as I'm aware, no good ever actually came of them. It wasn't a case of some. You can understand a case where somebody's operated on, and then they find a cure for something or something which, of course, you cannot be experimented on without your own free will. Now, I volunteered to be for clinical research because I thought that was something I can actually help out with and do things for it might be useful for other people. So, for example, I took part in tests for something called RSV. What's that? It's a virus. It's a lung virus, I think. It's a respiratory virus, and I also took part in tests for I've forgotten the word in English now. What's the word in English? Just a minute, I'm thinking of the word. Lyme disease, that's it. And borreliosis. And in my case, it was just as well, because it only turned out that I found out that I had it. I got it. And I spend a lot of time outdoors and all the rest of it, so I have actually contributed, I think, for finding a cure to borreliosis, or rather a vaccination for it. Oberheuser and Fischer did say that they had, after the war, that they had allowed women who would otherwise would have been killed, people who had been condemned to death, that allowed them to live. But this just wasn't true. These people had been condemned to death by no court. They were just arrested for arbitrary reasons in many cases. So, doctor's trial resulted in 7 men being sentenced to death, life imprisonment for 5, 2 20-year sentence, 1 15-year sentence, 1 10-year sentence, 7 acquittals. Oberheuser got 20 years imprisonment. So, in 1951, like many, it was reduced to 10 years. On the 4th of April 1952, she was released from Landsberg prison for good behavior. So, she'd spent from 1945 to 1952 in prison, so nearly 7 years in captivity. She's back on the job market in 1952, and to add insult to injury, she was recognized as something which in German is called a late returnee. That is to say, somebody who was a refugee from those parts, had been Germany before the war, but now had been assigned to Poland or to the Soviet Union, and these refugees had certain privileges over others, and so jobs would be given to them with priority in the state sector. Now, she came from Dusseldorf. Dusseldorf is not in the east, it's in the west. How she got that, I have no idea. Maybe she sort of gave her address as being Ravensbrück or something like that. Anyway, she tried getting a job in a Plön, which is in Schleswig-Holstein. Now in Schleswig-Holstein, there's a large amount, like by around mid 50s, half the population, or around half the population, were people who had been displaced from other places, and so for places that had been occupied by Poland or the Soviet Union, and but she was recognised there. And this person who recognised her led to the public prosecutor's office opening proceedings against her, and but they had to drop it because the German law, part of the agreement with the Americans, was that people couldn't be condemned twice for the same offence. And that's a normal thing under law, but in her case, is that the Americans were really thorough in getting all the charges put together. If they'd left one or two out, then you could be charged again. But this is something you'll see coming up over and over and over in various cases of war criminals. It's just it's very very common that in Germany people get arrested. There's an investigation, and they find out that they can't double jeopardy. Yes, that's the word. They can't charge them again. And but now the thing is this, though, as she had been, she'd been recognised, and this didn't do her business any good at all. There was even an article in the Daily Express in the United Kingdom, 4th of March 1958, and this came to notice of the British Medical Association, who then put pressure on the German authorities to revoke her medical practitioner's license, and which happened. She could no longer practice as a doctor. Now she did appeal against it, and but this was rejected. So she went back to the Cologne area, or Bonn. She went to a place called Bad Honnef, and it seems like she got a job in a pharmaceutical laboratory. There's a number of pharmaceutical companies in this area. Bad Honnef is between Bonn and Remagen, and so she then retired to a place called Linz am Rhein, which is super attractive. That is to the south of Remagen. Very, very nice place. And she died there in a nursing home on the 24th of January 1978. She was only 66 years old at the time. So there's a huge amount of evidence on this. I mean, above all, there's the Nuremberg doctor's trial, but the lots of information on it. Anyway, good. Sorry. Right. Okay, let's have a look at some of the questions. Right, shall I answer the one? Do you want to know who the 24th seat was for? Yes or no? Or do you want to have... No, you can keep guessing. Who was the 24th person at the Nuremberg trial, the main Nuremberg trial? Who was supposed to be the 24th person? And okay, so hello Craig and A and Ben, and Murray says, Alan, from your one question, what percentage of these doctors were motivated by advancement money, and what percentage held deep racist views of the scale? Ooh, that's a hard one. I don't know, Murray. I can't answer that one. I'm sorry. I think, I mean, it's very hard to believe how doctors can be racist, to be quite honest, because doctors, they're dealing with science, and they can tell that people are all the same, just that they sort of look a bit different. But under that cosmetic appearance, under it, everything's in the same place. And so, therefore, you'd expect doctors not to be racist. Because to my way of thinking, people like Mengele certainly was racist, although he did believe, in his case, he believed that Jews were superior. He believed there were two superior races, one was Germans and one was Jews. And in his idea was that these two were going to come into conflict, and therefore one needed to dominate the other. And so he said that it had to be the Germans that would need to dominate the Jews. And so that was his way of thinking. Other people like Oberheuser, maybe because they're so wrapped up in the system that maybe it was that. Maybe they just forgot about what they were doing. And there are people who have said that they were just carried along with the flow, and that was the reasons why they did it. But I can't understand myself, though. Why would anybody want to do some of these, these horrendous things? Can they not see how that person's suffering? It is accepted, as I said earlier, that a person who volunteers, anybody can volunteer for have things done on them, and in some countries these things can be. There's levels of security in some countries which don't exist in others. One person dies in clinical trials every something like 10 weeks, something like that, in the world. So I mean, it's quite low. Anyway, so hello, Senor and Ian, and Colin says sulfur drugs were first developed for use on animals, like lots of drugs. Yes, it's quite. Not in that drugs can actually be used for one thing, and you find out they've got another. Think around the time I was born, there was a drug called thalidomide. My mother took thalidomide, and now I was very fortunate, and nothing untoward actually happened to me. She only took it 3 times, but there was somebody in the cases where the mother took it once, and the child was born with all sorts of deformities, and this was really. I mean, people I'd be at the younger end of the thalidomide cases, but this was really big, newsworthy in the 70s, because the manufacturers, distillers, didn't want to hand out compensation to the people. But now, anyway, thalidomide has now been used in Poland about 25 years ago. I think now there's a doctor who found uses in other. Which I can't quite remember what it was now. But anyway, so things can actually change. Right, Senor asked, did she only serve 5 years in prison? In a way, yes, because she did have a bit of she had 2.5 years. She was held in captivity before she was actually sentenced. So her sentence was like, about 4.5 years she served after being sentenced. And anyway... so hello Mohammed, Senor, Big. Big's out cutting the grass, 19 degrees. It's hotter here in Germany. So Ian says he's been studying the concentration camps more recently, probably somewhat inspired by this channel. Oh, thank you. Hello David. Sorry. Okay. Murray asks, Murray worked in Kyrgyzstan, Central Asia, Bishkek, formerly Frunze, for 6 years. The quaint-looking main train station was built after the war. Yeah, it'd be great. I'd like to go there, to Kyrgyzstan. Anyway, I don't suppose it's going to happen. Right, hello, Rowan. And, Carrie asks, was it Muller who was the 24th seat? That, I would say, actually, of those suggested so far, that is the best suggestion. It's incorrect, but it's the best suggestion. Right, so the question still stands: who was the 24th seat for Nuremberg? Anyway, Gebhardt says John would want to prove that antibiotics wouldn't have saved Heydrich, and Gebhardt was blamed for Heydrich's death. It says John. Here's a good one. Ian says Irma Grazer was asked before she was hanged if she had any last requests, and she said, "Do it quickly." And John writes, sorry, I've gone down. Sorry. Sorry, I moved my hand too fast, and then I've lost the questions. The biography, says John, the biography of Karl Brandt by Ulf Schmidt goes into this in detail. It's a great read. Well, I haven't actually heard of that one, so there's one for you. The Karl Brandt by Ulf Schmidt. And, Christopher mentions the Weiße Angel. Der Weiße Angel. The White Angel, do you want to say, Christopher? I'm not certain if I've understood you in that one, sorry. John says it's hard for intelligent people to be bigoted. Mike says Martin Bormann was held was tried in absentia in Nuremberg. Yes, but I've counted him, John. Right, so we've got 21 there. We've got Martin Bormann in absentia, and we've got Robert Ley, who did himself in, but we're still missing one other. Was it Fagerlein? Fagerlein. No, he knew he was dead, Colin. He wasn't important enough. Hello, Dennis is in Richmond, Virginia, and John says, I don't think they found Fagerlein's body. I don't know. Don't think anybody's looking for it, actually. Oh, and here, well done, Senor has got the correct answer. Gustav Krupp von Bohlen und Halbach. Yes, it was the Krupp. The boss, they actually tried the wrong person, as it turned out, but he was put on trial. But it was for Krupp, and they decided that they thought the arguments to actually put him on trial were too weak, and so that was why he was actually he was pulled out. So very good. Murray says, I'm welcome anytime in Bishkek. Oh, that sounds good. Yeah, well, I'd like to go. Yeah, I would like to go. I met a woman from, this is going back to 2008. I met a woman from Azerbaijan, from Baku, and in Berlin. And anyway, I thought I know Azerbaijan and Bishkek, Baku and Bishkek's a long way apart. But anyway, I was thinking, I have to go there. And anyway, never mind. And Christopher said, The Marathon Man. Oh, sorry, I haven't seen. Isn't The Marathon Man the film that's got something? Has that got something to do with Auschwitz or something? I can't remember now. Or anyway, I haven't seen it. I've only heard about it. Good. Well, thanks very much for being here today. Yesterday when I did the one on tariffs, then afterwards I forgot. I even had some props. I was going to put my hand out and get some money out and ask if anybody knows what money is. Dustin Hoffman. And let's see if I've got any cash here. I might have. And if I have, I'm going to ask you if you know what this is. If I can find it. Here's something. What's this? There you go. There you go. What's this? Yeah, it's £5. But what is it? It's £5, but what is it? Anybody know? That's today's question. It's an economics question for you. It's not really to do with history, but history is everything. Yeah, Uzbekistan definitely on my list. Yeah, certainly. I want to Tajikistan as well. They've got this big pit with its burning flames all the time. I've forgotten what it's called now because the oil's in there. Okay, what I just showed you actually was a £5 note, but yes, it's £5 sterling. But what that represents is confidence. It's just a piece of paper because otherwise it's not worth anything. Here's a bit of paper here. It's got some of my work notes on. What's the difference between this bit of paper and that other one? Well, this one I can write on it, and the other one I can't. And so really, this bit of paper here is more valuable than the other one. But the other one's got people that have confidence in it, so that will actually give you services or products for the value of £5. And so you can go to McDonald's, for example, you have a hamburger and a drink and some chips, or maybe or something like that. Anyway, so the reason I wanted to do that and the thing about tariffs I did yesterday, but I forgot that. And I forgot, it only comes afterwards. I thought if I'd written this all down, then I'd had better ideas. But anyway, John mentions that gold is a great investment. I'm going to make a prediction. Bear in mind, I'm not giving investment advice. Gold has gone down. Sorry, I haven't checked this since Friday. But gold has gone down in value, and this is related to the current problems which have been caused by a certain person in the United States. And it's very difficult to explain how gold has lost its value, but I believe that gold could regain its value. I would suggest that gold, in the circumstances we have today, could be a good investment. I think, anyway. Not that I've got any money to put in it, but anyway. And Mohammed says it's a coin covered in gold. Yes, that's a very good way of putting it, because a coin could be covered in gold or it could be gold. And there's a huge difference in the value, because if you've got a coin, it is the intrinsic value of the metal inside it, which has the value. Yes, I promised to bear I promised to pay you the bear on demand. John, you think the price is artificially high? Okay, maybe it was. So, yeah. Currently, there are problems. I mean, the way the bond market is actually falling. That's in the United States. Again, I haven't checked it today, so I mean, I'm not entirely on top of it. I've been given a pile of work to do, which is nothing to do with my no this type of stuff. Okay, right, good. Well, thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. Tomorrow on Wednesday, I'm going to do another one, and tomorrow's talk is going to be on the murder of German soldiers by the National Socialist regime on the Eastern Front. And I think this is a particularly important subject, and this can. There's not a lot known about it, but anyway, I'll put forward a few ideas. I sort of keep developing more and more on this, and it's something I think I will keep coming back to as more and more information turns up. We know that in the T4 euthanasia there were thousands of World War I veterans who were murdered by the Nazi regime. But in this case, I'm going to be looking at World War II veterans who were murdered during that conflict by the Nazi regime. So that's tomorrow's. On Thursday, I'm going to clear off on Thursday afternoon. I'm going to go to a place where Einsatzgruppenkommander, Einsatzkommando, should say, Walter Stahlecker. And I know the village he came from, which is not so far from where I am, and I'm going to have a look to see if there's any Stahleckers in the graveyard. Right. Oh, Murray says I'm covering the parts that Dr. Felton hasn't got time to study. Oh, thank you. Great for watching, both of you and him. Well, he's written a few books though as well, which I haven't. I started writing a book in 2007 and realised I had enough problems with the company I was running at the time, so I just didn't have time to do it. But he's actually done it. And so anyway, thanks for this and the best sleep. Well, thank you, Colin. You too. Great stuff. Says Ian. And Ian was watching Auf Wiedersehen Pet. Auf Wiedersehen Pet is about people from Newcastle, where I come from, who went to work in Germany on the building sites in the 1970s. I have never seen it. That made you think of me. Well, yeah, but this is part of my culture, if you like, but I've never actually seen the program. I'd be a great author. Thanks, John. The thing about writing things now is that I'd have to write something on spec. I have nobody to back me or anything like that, and that's the problem. If you do something on spec and then you try and market a book that you wrote, you just don't know if you're going to sell it or not. The thing is, you've always sort of come back to economic reality. If I didn't have a normal job, then I couldn't actually do this. I mean, I'm no longer running my own company, and I've got a huge amount of freedom to do what I do. But then I was wanting to go back to Ukraine, and I was thinking now, in view of the situation I have here, I think my loyalties have to be to the company I work for, and the situation is that the project I'm working on, okay, maybe somebody else could be found, but there can't be many people who sort of with the knowledge in this particular sector that I have. So I don't know. Oh, Murray says, and Auf Wiedersehen Pet had the sergeant from Morse in AP as a tradesman from Newcastle. I don't know. I don't know who Morse was. That a detective program or something? Wasn't that from Dover? Or am I getting the wrong thing on? North Shields, not Newcastle. Yes, well, North Shields. I say Newcastle to be the generic place. Okay, thanks very much. Anyway, so all the best from me in Germany, and bye for now.